Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Props Network podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. There are no sports, but there are still reality TV shows. There are still movies to talk about. So today we have Scott Yager, our resident reality TV movie buff guy. Scott, how you doing, man?
What's up? Yeah, I guess that's really all you are these days is a buff guy. But yeah, glad to be talking to you. You know, wish it was under better circumstances. Yeah. But, you know, everybody I think is adapting to the new way that things are going. No sports, as you mentioned. And now everybody's turning to the next best thing or anything they can cling to in these times. So happy to be here to talk to you about all that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as a sports fan, I'm feeling it. I'm sure everybody listening to this is feeling it. You are a sports fan as well. In addition to all of your reality TV love, you're a sports guy as well, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm a diehard sports fan, and then as life progresses, you know, you go from you're living in college with four dudes, or even right after college, you're living with roommates, and you're watching sports every night, and you're figuring out hey, what random Clipper game is on Wednesday night?
Yeah.
Oh, what's the line on that? Maybe I'll put a bet in, and then you fall asleep. You don't even end up watching it. Now, I've got a 1-year-old kid. I've got a wife. We live in a 1-bedroom apartment. I'm watching a lot less sports, like actually watching it than I was before, but I'm obviously listening to podcasts and, hearing about how the seasons are going and whatnot. I honestly, and this is going to sound so millennial, particularly like the NBA. I mean, I watched 2 complete NBA games this year before the season was suspended. And those were the games I went to. I went to a Lakers Heat game when I was visiting Los Angeles. And like right before the season got suspended, I went to the Bucks Wizards game. Other than that, I haven't watched a complete NBA game in I don't know how long because it's the amount of time you have to put in. But I will say, especially basketball is very conducive to watching on Instagram and Twitter and seeing highlights and whatnot. So, I mean, like the careers of, say, like a Trae Young and a Luka Doncic, like I feel like I've seen all of their highlights. I've seen all, and granted that, I wish I'd been watching, 40-minute performances by them and stuff, but I don't feel like I'm completely tuned out, even though I don't get to sit down at the television and watch as many sports as I did before. And of course, during the football season, I do the fantasy, I do a baseball league. Whenever that comes back, I do a fantasy baseball league. But so, yeah, I'm a big sports fan too. I will say though, as far as the sports leaving the stratosphere for this, it's not necessarily affecting my, daily viewing routine as much. Because again, that space wasn't necessarily being filled with watching games, but it is, of course, like, a lot of what you want to talk about, what you want to debate about, even on my podcast, which isn't necessarily about sports. We're constantly talking about sports, at least tangentially. So the world is really turned upside down. Because even though I'm not one of these people, I know there are a ton of people who watch every single game by their home team, or are betting 6 games a weekend and watching all of them or whatever they're doing. And for those people, I really feel for.
Yeah. So Scott is the host of the Challenge Mania podcast. You talk about MTV's The Challenge on that show.
The fifth sport, officially. Soccer, football, basketball, baseball, hockey, and then The Challenge. We actually sell a T-shirt that says that over at Challenge. And we haven't altered the shirt, but I did make a joke where you could cross out the first 4, and literally the only one that's still on television beginning next week with the premiere of season 35 is The Challenge. So
there you go. There you go. It's definitely something that can replace sports if you're looking for something to really cling on to. I mean, in my mind, a lot of these reality competition shows are very much like sports. You kind of find a player that you really like, you cling to them, you cheer for them. When they lose or when they get voted out, you feel bad. When they do well, you feel good. So it is like, I mean, it's not sports, but in a way, like Survivor's on right now. I'm a huge Survivor fan. They do these physical competitions. There's like tribes that you can cheer for. It's very sports-like. And that's kind of a comforting thing to have right now with nothing else really to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of crossover between reality TV and sports. You certainly have a lot of people who are fans of both of them equally or similarly, like myself. But I do also feel like there are a lot of people who say aren't big sports fans, but they sort of channel that enthusiasm, channel that like weekly appointment viewing into reality television. There's a lot of women out there who love The Bachelor, and they do, Bachelor fantasy leagues. And there's a lot of, people of all sexes, actually. I used to do a Bachelor fantasy league. There's a lot of people who love Survivor and love drafting Survivor teams and seeing who wins and loses on that show. the challenge in particular, because the one thing the challenge has in common with sports is that, it's on season 35. They use a version of the same people every season, whereas Survivor, more often than not, you're recycling, and having completely new cast members. And every now and then you bring back blasts from the past. This season happens to be an all-winner season.
Right.
For the most part, it's all new players. On the challenge, I would say it's probably the other way. It's about 90% returning players who've at least done one season before, if not many. And you have some people like Johnny Bananas, who's sort of the patron saint of the challenge world, who's done 20 seasons of the challenge.
Holy cow.
People have been watching him on this show since the mid-2000s. He's won 6 of them. He's performed on 20 of them. You can look at his stat sheet. You can see how many eliminations he's won, where he's been eliminated. And a lot of people do become absorbed by the stats and analytics, as much as, you want to say that in quotes, element of this reality show. We just did a Challenge Madness bracket that we're currently at the Sweet 16 stage of, where it's 64 men, 64 women who have been on the challenge, all dating back to 1998, all the way up to 2020. And people are getting really into it. We're getting thousands and thousands of votes on each poll. And that's because people can kind of compare one to the other. It's like, okay, this person won 10 eliminations. This person won 5. And it's sort of like this fantasy bracket. You see a lot of brackets going around in March in a typical year, but especially this year where people are looking for internet content. There's a lot of hypothetical kind of fantasy matchup things going on. So I will say people joke about the challenge being the 5th sport. I think the one thing that keeps it from honestly ever actually being a sport is, the rules are a little bit up in the air. It is a television show. A lot of it is played for entertainment. A lot of stuff is left, kind of behind the scenes. Not everything's out in the open. It's not like doesn't go through the gaming commission or anything like that.
Right.
And of course it does air months and months after it's taped. Okay. Sports, the big thing about sports is that it's a live TV commodity. You're watching it happen. And when it happens, it's done and it's a fact. Whereas in a reality show, something could happen and they just don't show it. And then if they didn't show it, then it didn't happen. And that's the one thing that separates reality TV, I think, from sports, that no matter how athletic they might be and no matter how much physical performance could play a part in the show, the thing that separates it is that, for better and for worse, it's an entertainment first product, whereas sports are competition first. And most of the time, not most of the time, but sometimes to the detriment of the product. We've all been to a boring basketball game. We've all been, a boring half of football. We also saw a boring Super Bowl when the Patriots played the Rams. So it's, it's one of those things where you're probably not going to have a boring finale of a reality show. You're probably not going to have a boring WrestleMania. And that's why these things are sports entertainment. And, you have the actual sports. But now, hey, I'll take sports anything at this point.
That's exactly how I feel as well. Before we go any further, I feel like I should address this. If you're watching the video, what is it that you're wearing right now?
So, I mentioned this before we started. I was like, I hope I got dressed literally for this. We're on pretty much full lockdown here in New York City. Besides like going out for essentials and stuff. So like full disclosure, I was in, and you can't see, but I'm still in basketball shorts right now. I was not wearing a top. And of course my hair has been grown out. I haven't been able to go.
Right.
Really been able to go get my beard trimmed, get my hair cut. So, I'm like, so what do I put on? So I go in my closet, I throw on this Chalkline jacket. It's a Roddy Piper Chalkline jacket from Chalkline Official that I haven't had a chance to wear in a while because it's like I'm not going anywhere and I'm not seeing anybody. I think the last time I wore this was when I went to that Bucks-Wizards game. And this is a vintage Hulk Hogan Hulk-sized headband as well. With
very nice.
A little WWF logo on there. So I was just like, I got to put something on. I might as well have a little bit of fun with it. I just stare at myself.
Yeah, it's very true. So are you a wrestling fan then as well?
Well, yeah, I'm like, a lot of people who know this about me. I'm one of the bigger wrestling fans out there.
So that's great because WrestleMania is moving forward, right?
It's great and it's not because not to tell a sob story, but when I found out, we do a live component to our show, which is, so we do Challenge Mania, which is the podcast. And then we also do Challenge Mania Live, which is, we bring a bunch of people from the challenge, cast members, and my co-host and my co-host also a cast member on the show. We do a live version of our podcast in a comedy club with about anywhere from 3 to 5, sometimes 7 guests. Before the show, we do a pre-show meet and greet. Everyone gets to meet the cast members, take pictures, etc. And, we do really well with it. And the people really get excited for it. And a lot of people make friends with other, challenge fans around the country that they get to see every few months or every month. Sometimes people even come to all of our shows to kind of reconnect, and they kind of make it their thing. So I started kind of, look, you have this blank canvas of a calendar, what city should we go to and when. Right. I've started scheduling these things around stuff I want to go to. So literally a year ago when they announced WrestleMania was going to be in Tampa, I went and booked the Tampa Improv for the day before for Challenge Mania Live. Guys, like a year in advance, nobody books an improv a year in advance. I'm like, all right, well, when you are going to open it, let me have it. So we've been building up this Tampa show for months. Obviously spent a lot of money booking airline tickets and hotels and this, that. I had tickets I was going to go Thursday to Monday. I was going to go to, I think 3 wrestling shows on Thursday, 2 or 3 things Friday. We had our show on Saturday, and then I was going to go to nothing after. Then WrestleMania Sunday, then fly back Monday. And that's not even including the legwork I had to do convincing my wife to let me go and do this recording and stay for longer than the work actually calls for. Yeah. And then, of course, all this stuff starts happening with COVID, and it's like, what's going to happen? How large are the gatherings are going to be allowed? And look, literally it went from like, okay, maybe they're not going to do all this, but should we still do ours? Okay, our crowd's kind of small. Till like then 2 days later, it's like, oh no one's doing anything.
Yeah.
Now everything's been canceled and we can't even leave our home. So like obviously safety comes first and all that. But you've got hundreds of people who are excited to come to our show, and those people have all been refunded, and they're going to have to just wait until we figure out a day to come back to Tampa. But right. Selfishly, me, I planned this whole thing around going to WrestleMania, which is now no longer going to be in Tampa. Yeah. It's now going to be done at the Performance Center in front of no crowd. And I don't know if you've seen any of these no crowd wrestling shows. To me, a crowd is as much a part of a wrestling show as the wrestlers in the ring.
Absolutely.
One of my favorite matches of all time from WrestleMania 19, I believe, 18, with The Rock and Hulk Hogan. If you watch it, Hogan, I always say Hogan. You watch it on mute, and it looks terrible, because Hogan's not the best in-ring competitor, and their timing's a little off. If you watch it with the volume on, the crowd did this awesome thing where coming into it, The Rock's supposed to be the good guy. Everyone's supposed to hate Hogan. Yep. But everybody just decided that, 12 years after Hogan, wrestled Ultimate Warrior at the Toronto Sky Dome, we're just going to decide we're going to root for Hogan. And so kind of like towards the beginning of the match, they kind of decide to flip it and have it the other way, where Hogan wrestles as the good guy. And it's just the best crowd reaction ever. And even though, like I said, the in-ring product wasn't that great, it's one of my favorite matches of all time, based entirely on the crowd. Like if I had to rank the importance of the people in that match, I would say it's like the crowd, then The Rock, then Hogan are probably both in that match. And so you're now doing these matches. They're doing a 2-day WrestleMania.
Right.
Next week in their Performance Center, which is a gym that they own in Orlando. And there's no crowd. There's no noise. There's no crowd reaction. There's no playing to the crowd.
Exactly.
It all kind of just, in a weird way, I appreciate what they're doing because, again, there's such little content out there. So stuff that is on podcasts, YouTube web shows, all this stuff becomes more and more important. And, the reality shows that are luckily in the can that were filmed in the fall, like Survivor and The Challenge, great.
Yeah.
With wrestling, it really is shining a light on how much of a part the crowd does play in it. And I wonder is it really worth it? Like, I know they want to be giving USA and Fox and all their network partners this content. And I know deep down they probably do want to, give the fans something to watch. But I think it's more of like, we want to put this behind us and move on from these storylines eventually. So we're just going to do this. But I honestly think this is to a detriment of all this. I think all these men and women have been working hard, building up these matches. These people want to wrestle in a stadium in front of 70,000 people, not an empty room where they could get coronavirus. So I just don't know that it's worth the risk. The standards here are you're not supposed to be in a group of more than 10 people.
Right.
I don't know how you have less than 10 people in that building, even doing one match. So as much as I'm a big wrestling fan, I'm not elated that it's still on TV. I'd rather watch old wrestling that already happened in front of a crowd than new wrestling that isn't in front of a crowd. I honestly feel awkward watching it.
Sure, that makes sense. I mean, because if it's being broadcast, that means there is a TV crew there. There are people that are in contact with one another, and it's like a moral dilemma. Like, yeah, I love wrestling, I want to watch it, but is it worth putting people's health and life at risk for a product that, as you said, might not even be great to watch?
I really can't even watch. I'm going to probably force myself to watch WrestleMania, but I really have a hard time watching it. AEW, which is a different wrestling company, they did a better job with their show that they did last week, but I honestly would be totally fine with them just shutting it down. So,
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're moving forward, but
that's what I'm wearing, wrestling.
Yeah. Before we talk more about reality TV and movies, I want to give a shout out to DraftKings. Have you been looking at the pools they've been putting up?
I saw that they're doing a Survivor deal, right?
They're doing a Survivor pool. They also had like a Chopped pool, a MasterChef pool. They're just putting up pools
Right.
for
This is
any
how you can tell
show.
what they think. Yeah. I wonder if they're going to do a challenge one or not, but it's clear what they think the big business reality shows are.
Right.
I haven't taken too detailed of a look in there. I'd imagine, I think someone mentioned to me that they're more complex than just who's going to go home. They're like very specific of like, and they're free contests essentially, right?
They're free. Yeah. And so they're doing interesting stuff too. They also had one where you like bet on the weather. So you can do like over-unders for major cities' weather. You pick over-under on like Trump's tweets. They're desperate for people to be on their website.
I wonder at one point, are they going to have a thing where you can literally wager on people grasping at straws?
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. But look, I appreciate it. It's like everyone's trying to do their best at what they normally do with the confines of what they're given. So like, luckily, I do a podcast about a show that was filmed in September that's about to start airing next Wednesday. So great, because to be honest with you, I had been waiting. The last season ended in December, and we had been in this down period where, look, people take a few months off of caring about the challenge. Oh, it's not on TV. I don't really care. And half of our business comes from Patreon, where we have people subscribing to get bonus podcasts that we do after the show airs. Yeah. So I'm elated, and I'm in fact very lucky that the show I cover is going to start up next Wednesday the same way it would have started up coronavirus or not. And in fact, there might be more people plugged in or tuned in because of the lack of options. Whereas, again, if you're a gambling site, if you're a sports betting site, if you're a fantasy site, dude, this is supposed to be your baseball season. Next week's the opening day or this weekend or whatever, and that's gone. Like if your business is anyway involved in that, it's like, what do you do? Well, I guess you have to pivot to something that you can bet on, like the weather or Trump's tweets. So by all means,
let's talk about how some of these TV productions and film productions are now being shut down and what that means for the future. I know that Survivor was supposed to start filming in February, I think, and I think they shut that down. So season 41 will in all likelihood be delayed. It's probably the same with other reality shows.
I would guess that any show that has not been completely filmed up until this point would not start on time. Like, for instance,
absolutely,
goes out and films 2 shows back to back. So what they're probably going to do is go out and shoot 41 and 42. 41 is the one that would air in September. Now, they're shooting on the other side of the world. I don't know how far along they got in the casting process, but, depending on how far along they got, if they're ready to just leave, then maybe say come July, they're able to do it. They go out and shoot it. I still don't think they're hitting that start date that they normally get to. I think they push. But then you wonder, do you want to start a show? So there's these kind of natural breaking points in the calendar for television. Right. And so Survivor always kind of ends a couple weeks before the holidays. Yeah. Does Survivor want to start on a date where they're going to bleed into the holidays, where people aren't watching TV on New Year's Eve and Christmas Eve and this and that? Or do they just punt completely and kind of, we don't have a fall Survivor season? Yeah. That's very possible. Same thing with the challenge. Supposed to go out and film season 36, I believe in the next month or two. That's obviously being postponed. They didn't even lock their cast in yet. So, I'd imagine that's going to get pushed by quite a bit. And again, I don't see that starting up in the same time frame that it would have before. So there is an Amazing Race season that I think is in the can. So CBS will probably have something to run after this. Big Brother's another one. That one normally, of course, gets filmed in real time and we watch it happen. Yeah. That normally goes through the summer. That show's on 3 nights a week. You're not getting 3 nights on CBS any other time of year other than the summer. Yeah. You're getting a primetime slot on CBS in September. Good luck. No, you're not. So Big Brother might not air. Who knows? Right. They had to skip a Big Brother season. Big Brother Canada was in the middle of production. That was on for a while, and they just called it. They were like, and I think they were hanging their hat on, well, technically these people have been quarantined and whatever, this, that. It's like, why are we the only people able to, and I think it was a bit absurd that they had gone on for as long as they did, but they finally pulled the plug on that. So honestly, reality shows for sure, and then even scripted shows and movies, you got to remember the fallout of every movie has a very precise release date. Yes. The Fast 9 or whatever it was said, oh, we can't come out on April, whatever. Then we're coming out in April 2021. Yeah. They said, because these movies want to be the only dog in town. Yeah. They don't want to come out the same weekend as Wonder Woman. They're not going to be like, oh, whoops, we have to push by a couple weeks. No, they're they want to be in the clear of this coronavirus. They don't want to burn a double marketing budget and maybe just push it by a couple months and have to push again. Bond moved all the way to November. Yeah, that's right. With the movies and the television shows, again, Netflix is very precise about when they drop stuff and whatnot. So they might have shows that they filmed that they haven't necessarily, like that we haven't even heard about yet, that they could start dropping. But like the networks, I'd imagine, I don't know that they have their fall slate all ready to go, So I think what's going to happen is, particularly with television, live sports is the thing that, again, once it's ready to go, you're watching it live.
Yep.
Television, there's a little bit of a fallout from. So it's like, so this could get better from like a life perspective and from a job perspective and from, you can go outside.
Right.
But then life will still be different for a little bit because the stuff we're used to getting in September, October, etc., might not be ready. And even if it is ready a little later, they might not want to burn it on November,
Totally.
So,
yeah, and we're even seeing it with movies and how they're being released. Like movies that were in the theater before all of this really started hitting the fan are now available to watch at home. So I'm wondering if this is a bigger picture thing with the film industry, if this might become kind of a new way of watching films, is they put them in the theater for theatrical release for maybe a couple of weeks, and then they do make them available immediately for like a higher price point online, just depending on how all of this goes. Because like Invisible Man was out for a couple of weeks, then all this happened. That's now available on Amazon Prime. There's a couple of Portrait of a Lady on Fire, same thing. So it's interesting to think about how the film industry and, like you were saying, TV industry might change as a result of this happening, even after the virus is dead and gone, hopefully.
Well, okay, so let's just talk about the first thing that you mentioned, which is the idea that movies are now going straight to VOD.
Yep.
So far, we've seen that with movies that had already been released, right? So the way back with Ben Affleck, Onward, the animated movie, they got a couple weeks in the theaters, but also they kind of, again, were at the end of their marketing cycle. They were ready to go, right? We've yet to see it with a movie that had yet to be released.
Yes.
That will be the next decision to be made. I don't know if this is confirmed. I heard a rumor that a movie that was supposed to come out in April, which is starring Issa Rae and Kumail Nanjiani, that they just sold it to Netflix instead.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So this is a movie you would have seen in the theaters. It was supposed to come out, April 10th or whatever it was. And now instead it's just going to launch on Netflix. Is it going to launch on Netflix on April 10th or not? Who knows? But Netflix is going to benefit from having a movie go straight to them that actually got a full-fledged, full-screen marketing budget behind it, and the circumstances just sent it to Netflix. Are other movies going to be looking to strike deals like that? Because the ways that these other movies have been dealing with it is they put it up for $20 for purchase.
Yes.
And then it's kind of like, so people start doing the math. Okay, is this worth $20? And the problem is the experience of going to the movie and sitting in a dark room is very singular and whatnot. Whereas the idea of clicking on this for $20 versus clicking on this for free is kind of like, how badly do I care that this movie was supposed to be out,
Yes.
So we haven't seen it with, like, really, I would argue to be like a decision-changing movie, a Wonder Woman, a Fast 9, a Bond, a movie that people really can't miss unless they're seeing it the week of.
Right.
And, you do see with Birds of Prey, but I'd argue that anyone that into Birds of Prey probably saw it when it was out for 5 weeks or whatever it was.
Right.
With Invisible Man, you're probably getting people who are like, oh, that movie was well-reviewed, I'm going to watch it now. But anybody who really wanted to see it probably saw it in the theater.
Right.
So I do think we're not going to know necessarily what the actual financial, checks and balances of it is until a movie fully decides, hey, I know we were supposed to come out on July 7th. Instead, we'll be dropping on VOD 2 months earlier than even that. On May 30th or whatever, you can buy it for this, and boom. And then we'll have a month to decide, do you, I know you're not supposed to, but do you have friends over? Do we have Wonder Woman parties, whatever? And then do you cross-reference the money and say, hey, you know what? Like, we maybe didn't make 100% of what we would have made if everyone went to see this in 3D IMAX in the Hollywood Hills, but we made a good amount of money.
Yeah.
And the question is this going to change the entertainment industry going forward? Again, it's hard to assess because I think the first thing that will happen is you'll start to see the cycle shorten for like why does a movie have right now, when we were kids, it was a movie came out, it didn't come out on video for, it felt like a year and a half, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And it felt like it didn't hit HBO till a year after that.
Yeah.
And then it didn't go on free cable till a year after that, right?
Totally.
Now it's about 6 months, but it's still, there's a period where it's out of the theater, you can't see it anywhere,
right?
It's not on your Netflix yet. I think that's going to shrink. I think things are going to go from theater for 4 weeks, 6 weeks tops. Now it's on Amazon Prime, whatever, where you can buy it for 3, 6 weeks, whatever, boom, now it's on Amazon Prime for free. I think that'll get shrunken by this because I think we're going to start to, I think the amount of time that a movie stays in your consciousness is going to change because now we're getting used to the fact that, hey, you know what? It's pretty cool that The Invisible Man went from being the buzzworthy movie in the theaters that was getting all the good reviews. All the people who are go-getters, like the Scott Yagers of the world, are going to go out and see the movie. But now that that time's gone by, let's aim for the people who don't want to leave their house, but would maybe pay $20 for this. So that might be the next thing that we see.
It's a very interesting time. And for TV and film professionals, like you freelance in the TV and film world, I do the same. It's a terrible time. It's like a brutal time right now to be working in entertainment. So we're hoping this ends soon for everyone's sakes, the viewer and the people who work on the stuff. We're hoping, and for sports,
a lot of people are going to be starting podcasts.
It's going to be a big influx of podcasts and web shows over the next couple of months. That is
the one big also cancellation thing and shift that will affect what we talked about this year, which was the Oscars stuff, is not just the dates moving and movies potentially moving out of the awards contention period, but like the Cannes Film Festival right now is being postponed. Who knows what'll happen to it? South by Southwest canceled. Tribeca Film Festival canceled. Sundance did happen in January, but who knows how long this lasts, where do Venice and the New York Film Festival and perhaps Toronto Film Festival, do those get pushed? These are a huge part of the year-long narrative for some of the movies that start to hit their stride critically towards the end of the year. We're looking at a calendar where the end of the year might be like essentially the summer when it comes to these movies coming out. Like right now, there's a lot of wishful thinking. People think that this will be kind of nipped in the bud by July or August. But what if it's not? You don't know. This next Oscar season could be one of the weirdest ones ever. Could have movies that are completely withholding themselves from it because they're maybe a money first movie. And that's not to say that money first movies don't give us some contenders sometimes. I mean, look, like Johnny Depp was nominated for Best Actor for Pirates of the Caribbean. She didn't get nominated, but Lupita Nyong'o was almost nominated for Us, and that movie made $100 million. Like, there's movies that probably it would behoove them not to just come out straight to VOD that might have contributed some of the Oscar nominations or the frontrunners going into the season. That might not happen now. So it's going to be a really weird year. It's like you wonder, is it possible next year is one of the crazier betting years for movies when it comes to the Oscars? We might have as little a grasp on it as we've ever had if we don't have the film festivals to kind of set up the narratives, and if we don't have everybody out there going to see movies and talking about it.
That's a very interesting thing to think about, especially considering the Oscars are in February, but these effects of the next 5 months will impact that so heavily.
Parasite premiered at Cannes. It won Cannes. That put it on the radar of all the sort of cinephiles who then went out and saw it, who then told their friends. And, that's what got it this like year-long run at IFC in New York City. And that's what started this whole thing going. Quentin's movie premiered there too. And, I'm not saying that's going to happen 2 years in a row, but taking that, Joker premiering at Venice added a level of credibility to that movie as an awards contender that I don't think it would have had if it just came out as sort of this popcorn movie that would have probably still made close to $1 billion. But does it get all those nominations? It probably gets Joaquin Phoenix, but does it get everything else? Does it win score? Maybe not if it doesn't premiere at the prestigious Venice Film Festival and win the audience award.
Absolutely. So much crazy stuff to think about. We're going to talk about some more lighthearted stuff after this ad. This podcast is brought to you by thepropsnetwork.com. Visit thepropsnetwork.com for all the latest betting news and the best bonuses from the top legal betting sites, like a sign-up bonus up to $1,000 at DraftKings or a $20 free bet at Unibet just to try it out. Not sure what you're going to bet on right now, but they do have Russian table tennis up if you want to dabble in that. You must be 21 years or older to bet. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER now. All right. You mentioned earlier.
By the way, if you're not sure if you have a gambling problem, if you're gambling on Russian table tennis, you don't have a gambling problem. So it works out. You don't even know. Although I will admit I look like a Russian table tennis player right now.
You do.
Today we're going to play Russian table tennis. My name is Scott McCroftky.
You mentioned earlier March is typically a time for brackets.
Yes.
And with that in mind, I created a bracket tailor-made for Scott Yager.
All right.
What I've done And I didn't tell you about this beforehand, so this is off the cuff.
Off the cuff.
I've compiled 16 of some of my favorite sports movie characters.
Okay.
And assembled them into a bracket, and we are going to figure out which of these characters would win a competition reality show.
Oh, okay. So it's a reality show. So the sport is or isn't coming into play at all. Like, are they playing?
The way I'm thinking of it is it's like a challenge or a Survivor type show where physicality does help, especially early on, winning immunities. So like that can come into play when you're considering these matchups. It's also a very social game. I'd say that's the biggest part, is how they interact with other people.
Okay.
We'll go through this and we'll figure it out together.
Got it. And you guys at home can bet on this, by the way.
Yeah. I seeded them, but I'm not going to tell you their seeds.
Don't do that.
Yeah. All right. The first matchup, Coach Jimmy Dugan from A League of Their Own.
Okay.
Goes up against Billy Bean from Moneyball.
Oh, real life person, right?
That is we have a couple of real life people on here. So you can either treat them as if they're the real person or how they're portrayed on the film.
Okay. Cause here's my thing, right? Now that's what I was going to say, because Brad, like Billy Bean.
Exactly.
Obviously is responsible for the Moneyball strategy, had essentially a best-selling book written about him.
Yep.
Athletic in his own right. But Brad Pitt, you would argue, has like a sort of a charisma and a likability factor.
Yes.
That you gotta remember, he's also going into this fictional reality show without the albatross of being Brad Pitt.
Yes.
So he gets to have all the Pittness without the target of, well, we got to get out Brad Pitt.
Exactly.
Jimmy Dugan, I feel like, could be a little bit too. I mean, there's no crying in baseball. That's not going to play.
That was very good. That was very good impression.
Crying all the time on there. So
yeah,
there is crying in Big Brother. There's no cry. So I'm going to go Billy Bean.
I think that's a smart move. He's also a great judge of people's talents and strengths. Yes. So he'll make good alliances.
And, of course, obviously manages a bunch of elite athletes with the Oakland Athletics, but also manages a bunch of kind of quirky figures like in the office. I forget the guy's name, but like the statistician that Jonah Hill plays.
The Jonah Hill guy, yeah.
He would be on a reality show with a guy like that, and if he can kind of use him, it could work. So Billy Bean all the way.
All right. Second matchup, we have Rod Tidwell from Jerry Maguire, the wide receiver, and we have Annie Savoy from Bull Durham, the love interest.
Okay, I have never seen Bull Durham.
Ooh, big disadvantage. Let me describe this character for you.
Is this Tim Robbins or is this Kevin Costner?
This is Susan Sarandon.
Oh, Susan Sarandon.
This is Susan Sarandon when she's like in her 30s. She's beautiful. Great. She is the love interest. She has a few baseball players wrapped around her finger. She's very smart. She's very into baseball. She's like a huge baseball fan. She's very romantic. She's essentially, if you were watching a season of Survivor, a very like beautiful young woman who could get some guys wrapped around her finger.
And she's not an athlete, right? She's the
love.
Not
an athlete. She's a love interest.
So I'm going to say, sight unseen, that she, by being a character who wins, at least I don't know how it works out, but for part of this movie, wins the heart of an athlete.
Yep.
I'd imagine she's got a lot going on, both in the mental department, in the social skills department. Yep. We all know what young Susan Sarandon looked like, and Tidwell is a little over the top for me. He profiles as an athlete. As soon as he walks in the door, he's flashy. He's bragging about everything. Those people do not do well on reality shows. Every athlete that's ever played, say, on Survivor has barely made the merge.
Right.
So I'm gonna go with Susan Sarandon's character.
All right. Sure. Annie Savoy, moving on. I like that pick. I think she, depending on who she's matched up with, could do very well in this bracket.
Yeah, we're not gonna show him the money.
All right, moving on. We have Coach Herb Brooks from Miracle, and we have Rocky Balboa, obviously from Rocky.
So Rocky Balboa to me is now let me ask you a question here. It's very important. Now Kurt Russell plays the coach, Herb Brooks, correct?
I think, yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, people like him often do well on like a Survivor. Is Rocky Balboa coming in as like celebrity boxer Rocky Balboa, or is he kind of down on his luck, hasn't really made it yet, local Philly guy? I
think it's like Rocky 1, Rocky Balboa, where it's like he's trying to become.
I got a joke. You want me to tell you? I can tell you a joke. Yeah, I'm going to go Rocky Balboa because he's very unassuming. And, I could see him. I mean, athletically, obviously, he's gifted.
Yeah.
He's not going to intimidate everybody with his brain. I feel like people are going to feel like they can take him out when they want. So I think he just has better odds. I'm going to go with Balboa there.
I like that pick. Yeah. Might be a little bit of a language barrier just because of his insane voice.
We could do the fun, like we use subtitles, even though he's
one of those characters.
Yeah.
All right. Next matchup. Sharon Gaines, who is the wife in Friday Night Lights, also known as Tammy Taylor if you watch the TV show Friday Night Lights.
Oh, we're not going Tammy Taylor?
No, it's both played by Connie Britton, so I think the character is pretty much the same. We can go Tammy Taylor.
I saw the movie, but it did not make an impression on me, really.
I agree. The TV show is amazing.
Almost so much that I didn't even remember that Connie Britton played both roles.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I remember from the movie was that Derek Luke was the star, and I always thought Derek Luke was going to go on to this great movie career, and he never really did. But if we're going Tammy Taylor from Friday Night Lights, I'm going to tell you haven't said who she's going against, but I'm picking Mrs. T here because she's one of the most beloved to me and lovable characters in the history of television.
Yeah, she's incredible. Here's who she's going against. She's going against Michael Squints Paladares, Squints from Sandlot.
Yeah, no way. And even before you said Squints, you could have given me every character in Sandlot, plus James Earl Jones, plus the dog, plus Babe Ruth. I'm still going Mrs. T because she is just the sweetest, most lovable, and just the nicest mom and guidance counselor. I had a guidance counselor who was like just shut me down. And when I told her, I remember when I told her I got into Syracuse, she thought I was kidding. That's just tell you how good of a student I was. I barely believed I got into Syracuse. Like Coach T's wife, Mrs. T, was I wanted her as a mom and as a guidance counselor. So we're gonna go her. 100%.
Yeah, and honestly, growing up watching that show, had a huge crush on her.
Oh yeah, and she's super sweet in real life too, Connie Britton. She's great.
Perfect. Love her. So yeah, so far we've got Billy Bean moving on, Annie Savoy, Rocky Balboa, and Tammy Taylor.
By the way, don't be scared. I forget I think he's divorced, Billy Bean, right?
I don't know, but you could go in with that assumption.
Well, I'm saying I know that Coach T and Mrs. T are happily married.
Yeah.
I feel like you're going to get a lot of people shipping Tammy and Billy Bean, Bammy or whatever they're going to be calling. Just saying.
All right, now from the other conference here, we've got Ricky Wild Thing Vaughn from Major League going up against Air Bud, the dog from Air Bud. Yeah, the dog, the golden retriever.
Wow, I don't know what's less sanitary, having a dog potentially living in the house or in the confines of this reality space, or having even a fake Charlie Sheen. I guess just for the quirky, I don't want to throw off the balance of the whole thing, so I'll go Vaughn. I just don't want to throw a dog in there. You know what I mean? So
sure.
I'm going to go Vaughn, but and again, reality star wise, there's a couple people, particularly in the early ages of MTV, that I think are as weird as him. So
yeah,
I would go there, Wild Thing.
And there are, some seasons of these reality shows, there is just a complete madman who makes it super far because, especially in Survivor, everyone knows they could beat them in the end. So he's the type of guy who's a hothead.
He'd call himself Wild Thing, and they'd all call him Wild Thing. He'd be like War Dog on Survivor.
Yeah, and Air Bud maybe he's voted out first because what's a bigger threat than a golden retriever?
Right.
Everyone loves dogs.
You're right.
All right, next matchup: Mr. Miyagi against Lee Ann Tui from The Blind Side, the mom from The Blind Side.
Oh, the mom from The Blind Side.
Yeah.
Okay. She was feisty for sure. Sandra Bullock played that role. I'll be honest. So I have recently watched seasons 1 and 2 of Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
Which I really like, and I recommend that if you do have you could probably do a free trial of the YouTube Premium, whatever, and then bang it out, especially being quarantined. I highly recommend it. I think it's 100 times better than the Karate Kid franchise we watch. That's a very dated franchise.
Yeah.
Miyagi, I think he's a little old, and I don't mean that in just an age, I wonder how he performed, but also he's just from another generation, a little too much respect needed for him.
Yeah.
And it's he's going to be in a house with a bunch of people who are cast for a reality show, not to be apprentices in so I wonder if he's not a good call here.
Yeah.
And who's he up against?
Lee Ann Tui.
Yeah,
Michael Oher's adopted mom.
So take out of it the whole thing about, she's the one who adopts Michael Oher and all that stuff.
Right.
Picture her in a vacuum. Like, grab me a scene from that movie where she's like sassy and talking to someone, and that's a reality star.
Yeah.
So I think she's not only advancing here, I think she's one of the front runners.
Yeah, Mr. Miyagi does seem like the kind of guy that goes into the house or goes to the camp and immediately wants to become the leader. And the leader never does well.
I think he'd rub people the wrong way.
Yeah.
Bit bossy.
A little bit bossy. All right, next matchup. Rudy Rudiger versus Goldberg from Mighty Ducks.
Oh, well, Goldberg's in bad shape. I don't know. Every few months he shows up on my Facebook feed, and I can't tell if it's
20 years older.
I can't tell if it's the same article. Well, he is 20 years older, but
no, I'm saying from each time you see him, he looks 20 years older.
Well, the other thing is, like, because Goldberg was like, not to, say whatever, but like when he was a kid, he was like a pudgy kid. And that was like part of the charm. He was a cute, pudgy, goalie kid, and now he's like addicted to meth or crack.
I know.
It's terrible. And yeah. You can see just enough of him in there that you recognize that it's him, but he looks so different that it's so jarring. And I can't tell if it's like the same article that like different like clickbait sites are finding 6 months later, or whether he's really getting arrested for meth and crack every 6 months. Yeah. But it's showed up in my feed several times. So I can't go him. I don't even think he'd be able to pass the psych eval.
It's probably very true.
I got to go Rudy.
And, Rudy's a gritty guy. I think he would really show up the challenges. He would give it his all. He's a nice dude.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to even be a walk-on Notre Dame, you're a great athlete. It's just the size that doesn't lend itself to being a football player would be fine on a reality show. A lot of the endurance stuff and strength stuff you do on Survivor, it doesn't necessarily help to be bigger.
Right. All right. Final matchup of this preliminary round. We have Michael Jordan from Space Jam, who is just Michael Jordan, going against Scott Howard, the Teen Wolf.
You got to go Scott Howard, and assuming also that people don't realize that he's a wolf,
Okay, so he's able to hide it?
Well, here's the thing. So I have to make the distinction, because the same reason I'm not going to pick Michael Jordan walks in the house, you're like,
that's Michael Jordan. Yeah.
So it's like, hey, he's going to beat me in everything. He already has $1 billion.
Yep.
Right? Guy's got a gambling problem. Who knows? He gets into trouble. He's making deals in the back door. So the same reasons you'd be scared to play against Michael Jordan and you'd want to eliminate him, you would also not want to play with a known werewolf. So if they, you know what I mean? So assuming Scott does a good job of hiding that at least till they get into the house, right, I'm going to go him.
Yeah.
You tell me that's on the scouting profile, I say they give Jordan a shot. So
we'll say he goes in anonymous. No one knows who he is or his powers.
Anonymous Teen Wolf.
All right. Moving on to the Elite Eight. Let's head back to the Billy Bean versus Annie Savoy matchup.
Okay, so this is where I'm going to have to go with the familiarity of Billy Bean and just not advance someone further that I don't know the character well. But although I do think, like, you just tell me what goes into the sausage, the Susan Sarandon, this and that, whatever. And I like the package there, but it's disingenuous for me to kind of advance someone that far who I didn't see the movie. Yep. And then Bull Durham is on our fantasy movie wheel selection list, so hopefully I will be watching it the next year, and I might come back to you. I might say, Steve, I was wrong. She would have won the whole thing. But for now, give me good old Brad.
It's a good decision. And I think Billy Bean is wise enough. He's a smart enough guy to where he wouldn't be put under her spell. Like, she is a very sexy, smart woman, but he is, I think, is all business. He wants to win the game. He wouldn't allow himself to be wrapped around her finger in a way that other players might be.
Well, he also, athletically, he's not a famous player, so you don't see him coming from a mile away, but he's got the athleticism and whatnot.
Yeah.
And obviously the guy is known for literally knowing how to utilize people's strengths and put together great teams and alliances and this and that. It's like probably the best skill set you could have for a reality show.
Yeah.
Give me double B.
All right. Next matchup, Rocky Balboa versus Tammy Taylor.
Well, you know what? Let me tell you a little joke about Coach Taylor. No, you got to go Coach T's wife here. I mean, look, I'll say this, and I keep calling her Coach T's wife. That's extremely condescending. She's her own guidance counselor, Tammy Taylor. Give me double T, because she's unbelievable. She's Connie Britton, and I want to see another week of her in the house with Billy Bean, because I'm shipping it for sure.
All right. Now we got Ricky Wild Thing Vaughn up against Leanne Tui.
Yeah, so this is where I got to get rid of Wild Thing.
Yeah.
I just think it's hazardous.
Yeah.
You know. So and again, I said it before. I think Leanne Tui, as much as I hate saying that name, it sounds like I'm hawking a loogie. I think that character, just the sassy Southern mom, is not going to take any shit from anyone.
Yeah.
And obviously she's in great shape. Just look at Sandra Bullock. I think she's, no matter how fast that bus has to go, I think she's willing to drive it. So
yeah.
give me Sandy.
Yeah. Wild Thing probably dumped the rice by this point. Or something.
Yeah. And yes. He's the quirky pre-merge boot for sure.
Yeah. All right. Last matchup of the Elite Eight. We have Rudy Rudiger against Scott Howard.
This one I'm going to go Rudy. I just think at this point, you're staying overnight with these people. It's kind of hard to hide the werewolf factor of your life. Past a couple overnights, you probably figured it out. And it's a pretty easy pitch. Hey, what do you say we vote out Scott? He might eat us if we don't. So I'm pushing Rudy through here.
It sounds like the safe move. All right. We're in the final four. Billy Bean and Tammy Taylor is the matchup.
God, this is tough, See, this is where you wonder, are Tammy and what's her name? Leanne? What's Sandra?
Yeah, Leanne Tui.
Leanne and Tammy, do they work together, or are they kind of like, I need to be the kind of person with this archetype towards the end of this game? Yeah. Who do they think they could win against? If they're working together, I think advance both of them. I wonder, does one of them make it further than the other? Does, say, a budding romance between Tammy and Billy scare one of them, and that becomes their demise? So I'm going to go, as much as I love Connie Britton, I guess I'll go Billy Bean here.
Wow.
Yeah. But I'm going Leanne Tui over Rudy for sure.
Wow. Okay. So we have our final matchup. It's Billy Bean and Leanne Tui. Very interesting matchup. One of which is a baseball genius who put together a really good baseball team using analytics. He's a really good judge of skills and character. The other, a very sweet woman with a very big heart. Who
adopted an offensive lineman.
Adopted a man who
that's a resume.
Has a
Here's what I'm wondering in this hypothetical answer. Do you want me to treat this like they're the final two and I'm voting?
So let's do that. Let's say Billy and Leanne are the final two, and it is now up to a jury of voters to decide who deserves to win.
Because that changes my answer, because all the stuff you said about Billy Bean that I think would get him to this point, which it has, I do think when you're talking to a jury and what I think does then it become apparent that you might want to reward the woman who got here by her own merit, by her own, social skills, by how nice she is, and has this great story. She literally adopted some kid basically on a whim because she wanted to help him. He ends up becoming this, Pro Bowl NFL lineman. And it's a great story. And even if you've heard that in the news, you're like, you don't think like, oh, she doesn't need the money. You think, what a great person. Billy Bean, I wonder at this point, if the cat's out of the bag, are you like, yeah, he made it far. That should be his championship. It's like when the Oakland A's, they don't win the World Series.
Right.
Like they almost get there and they still get the movie out of it. So you wonder, it's like, Mike White on Survivor making the final tribal. Is that enough of a success for a famous Hollywood director to get that far? Yeah. So I'm going to go with Tui here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tremendous. I would have never expected it.
But if you do just tell me, not jury aside, who has kind of the better package to objectively go further in a game, whatever. Billy Bean obviously is like what you would cook up, in a lab for good at a social game and a physical game. But ultimately, between the two of them, I would say she's winning the vote.
Wow. Love it. So just so we're clear on my seeding. Yeah. I had Leanne as the 8th seed coming in.
Love it.
She made a great run. I had Billy Bean as the 3rd seed.
Okay, but I'm interested to hear who your 1 seed was, because I wonder if it's not just like the flashiest name and not necessarily like, who's your 1 seed?
I had Air Bud as my 1 seed. This is
Based on what?
based on the fact that he won't make anyone mad. Everyone will, unless they're allergic to dogs, he will be a crowd pleaser. He could be an asset in challenges if he can follow direction.
But he can't listen to rules.
But it's a dog. Everyone loves dogs. If you had to choose between having a person around in your house or your camp or a dog.
But he's the definition of a wild card. You don't know if he's ever on your side. Like, how's he voting? Are they just putting a biscuit in a?
Yeah.
Okay, who is the 2 seed?
The 2 seed, I had Annie Savoy. So you not seeing that movie, I think, really hurt her. But she should have been in a more popular movie. That's her own fault,
Look, I wonder. It's like, do you kind of, if you had to group, don't want to necessarily typecast here, but you might say that Miss Savoy, Coach T's wife. Why do I keep? You know what it is? Is that I want to call her Coach T, and then I forget that she wasn't the coach, because to me she was the coach. To me, she did as much coaching on that show as Kyle Chandler did.
It's true.
But then I'm like, I can't call her Coach T. She was really his wife, Coach T's wife. So Tammy Taylor, Mrs. Savoy, and Luna Vachon. What was her name?
Leanne Toohey.
Leanne Toohey.
I could be saying that last name wrong also.
Similar, I would say, profiles. You wonder, would they all get cast on the same season?
Mm-hmm.
They're all kind of similar age brackets, and they're, do they check similar boxes? Whereas then you have everybody else, And so I did end up picking one of those people to win, and just ended up being the one, not even the one I was necessarily the most familiar with. I think she just had the easier road there. Yeah. I wonder if it was flipped. I'm definitely picking Tammy Taylor over Rudy. I'd probably pick Billy Beane over Toohey. So she just got a bad draw. Tammy Taylor would have won this thing if she drew Rudy and not Billy Beane. So
she just got stuck in a rotten alliance. There was a twist in the game, and it screwed her over.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a shame. You hate to see it. But congratulations to Leanne. Big win for you here on the Props Network podcast.
Big win. Congratulations to everybody who picked Leanne in their bracket they're doing right now, filling it out and gambling.
Yeah, congrats to all of you that made some money on this. Very, very exciting. So that's kind of all the time we have here on the podcast. Scott, do you have anything you want to plug before we head out?
So in the spirit of people that are looking for stuff to watch and whatnot, there's this documentary series on Netflix called Tiger King.
Yes.
And it's absolutely batshit crime story about these, exotic animal dealers, and they run these, kind of roadside zoos in, Oklahoma and South Carolina and Florida. And there's this big blood feud between one of the guys who runs one of these kind of half illegal parks. It's not illegal, but the way he does things is not really above book. And then you have a woman who runs like a conservation effort, and they really butt heads. And it's kind of the story between both of them, but then also kind of everyone's backstories. And there's really not a good guy in sight. And it is just a snapshot of a part of America that some of us up here in New York don't get to see too often. I was immediately fascinated by it. I went and pumped out 4 hours of podcasts about it yesterday.
Wow.
Made them all available for free. They are on my Patreon page, but they're free. So you can just go and click them. They're public. One of them, I spoke for about 100 minutes with one of the leading experts on these characters and stories. He's the guy who did the big podcast for Wondery that's now called the Joe Exotic podcast. That came out last year. He went down there. He's met all these people. He was at the trial, all that stuff. So 100 minutes with him, eye-opening stuff, crazy. Wow. So first watch the show and then listen to the podcast. And the challenge premieres next Wednesday at the same time as Survivor. So that's kind of annoying. But
wow,
next Wednesday, 8 o'clock on MTV.
So let me talk to you about the Tiger King really quick, because I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, you got to watch.
Where is it based in Tampa, Florida?
One of the woman, Carol, who she is in Tampa. Yeah.
Is she own the Big Cat Rescue?
Yep.
I lived about a mile away from there growing up.
Well, then you need to watch this for a million reasons. For the first 500,000 reasons, or because it will, that when you find out because episode 3 is all about her and the sort of mysterious disappearance of her first husband and whatnot.
Oh my God.
And so just having a bunch of context for the place that you live near, this will blow your mind.
Yeah, that sounds great. I used to always drive by the Big Cat Rescue and be like, oh, that's cool. I'm surprised that's allowed to be there, because it was like behind a Best Buy.
Yeah, that's the one that's like sort of on the up and up, because they're rescuing cats from other people in this movie, but then they also sell tickets for people to come look at them. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
The other guys are like breeding cats and breeding.
Great.
Okay. Black market. So, but you gotta watch it.
I will check it out, and then I will check out your podcast. Scott Yager, thank you so much for joining us today. And to everyone listening, thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you again soon. Goodbye.